Chancellor Mercier, President McClatchy, faculty, graduates, and guests. I'm honored to introduce Louise Penny today, a Canadian writer, the author of 19 novels, New York Times bestsellers published in 31 languages, with more than 10 million copies sold in North America alone. A former radio host and journalist with CBC, over the past 2 decades, Louise has produced a series of crime novels set in a mythical village in the eastern townships near Montreal. Louise has won international accolades, including 9 Agatha Awards and a Crime Writers Association Dagger Award, among many others. She is a member of the Order of Canada and the Ordre National du Québec. In her novels, Louise promotes human goodness as an antidote to evil. In real life, she champions literacy efforts, supports new writers, and started a foundation to support dementia care in Canada. A lover of dogs, she's the spokesperson for Golden Rescue, a charity that helps abandoned retrievers. I met Louise one time many years ago at the Laurier Writers Festival when her second book came out. She encouraged me to pursue my own writing, and I followed her career and loved her books ever since. Despite the incredible success and recognition she has earned, Louise is one of those authors you can picture inviting home for dinner or hanging out with over a coffee. Her warmth and wit makes that seem like something that should and could be possible. As a writer, she's clever, funny, and thoughtful. Her setting in the village of Three Pines is one of those compelling fictional locales that makes readers want to move there immediately. As the Three Pines series has evolved, the plots have grown increasingly complex with larger societal issues woven in. Substance abuse, corruption, greed, and climate change contribute darker threads to the tapestry, but she always brings these threads back to personal motivations and ultimately to personal choice. Fictional characters like Tolkien's Frodo or Scout from To Kill a Mockingbird are so well drawn that they transition from imagination to hold permanent real estate in readers' hearts and minds. Similarly, at the heart of each of Louise's books are a cast of recurring characters that make the world of Three Pines so compelling. Human, flawed, but also amusing, warm, irreverent, and brave. I have to remind myself that they're fictional. I'd like to invite them to dinner too. Her main character, Armand Gamache, is the head of homicide for the Sûreté du Québec, a principled man in a difficult and high-stakes job. One of the many lessons Armand teaches his team is that of the 4 most difficult statements. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I don't know. I need help. The 4 deceptively simple statements that lead to wisdom. In her books, her characters, and in her life, Louise reflects courage, intelligence, generosity, and decency. Danger, fear, and hatred are met in the end with wit, grace, and kindness. It is these qualities that make me sure that Louise is a great fit for Laurier, and I hope you will join me in welcoming her to the Laurier family. Madam Chancellor, I'm instructed by the Senate of the University to request you to admit to the degree of Doctor of Letters, honoris causa, Louise Penny.
By virtue of the authority vested in me as Chancellor, I admit you to the degree Doctor of Letters, honoris causa.
I'm now going to welcome Dr. Penny to the podium to sign the registry of the university. This registry is housed in the Laurier University archives, and it holds the signature of all of our honorary degree recipients, and then Dr. Penny will address convocation.
Thank you. What an amazing day for me, but even clearly more so for you. And thank you. I'm going to have your entire introduction tattooed. on my publisher, not on me, of course. And Madam Chancellor, Principal McClatchy, staff, friends, family, graduates, what a remarkable day. You know, and I have to say, it's somewhat heightened even for me. I mean, this is an incredible, astonishing, quite surprising honor for me. And it is heightened because I have members of my own family here, including two who graduated from Laurier, Brian and Charles. Who came because they did not believe Auntie Louise was getting an honorary degree. They would not be the only ones surprised. When I was your age, no one would have believed I would be standing here. And I'm reminded of a wonderful line from Marion Pearson, who was the wife of Prime Minister Pearson, who once said that behind every successful man, there stands a surprised woman. Now, behind me, this woman, there's a whole legion of surprised people. Because no one, again, when I was your age, would have believed I'd write one book, never mind 20 books. And you know, I didn't have success written all over me. When I go on book tour, the main question I get asked, beyond where do you get your ideas, and I can never answer that. You'd think I could, but I can't. But the main question I get asked is, how do you do it? How did you go from wanting to write a book, which I had my entire life, to actually writing a book? And when someone asks that, which, as I say, they inevitably do, I think of my favorite Far Side cartoon. How many of you know the Far Side? I know, it's brilliant, isn't it? Well, this one shows two scientists. They're standing in front of a chalkboard. The one side of the chalkboard there is a formula, and then there's a gap, and then there's the solution. And the second scientist is saying to the first, pointing to the gap, I think you have to be a little more specific in here. Because between the formula and the solution, the first scientist has written, and then a miracle occurs. And that is actually the answer to the question. How did you do it? How do you go from wanting to write a book to having one published? A miracle occurred. Now, I don't normally tell people what that miracle was, but you've been so gracious to me, and this is such an honor that I will tell you what it was. It means going back to my childhood, which is not a long story, and fortunately for you all, it's riveting. I was born afraid. Never given any reason, thank God, I just was. I was afraid of failure. I was afraid of judgment of others. I was afraid of heights, of holes, of the morning dew. I was hugely afraid of other children. It got to the stage where, as punishment, when I was naughty, my mother would send me outside to play. Now, I knew that I can't go through life like that. With that sort of fear is bondage. So I had to come up with a solution, some way to meet life and have as full a life as possible. So I thought about it, and the solution I came up with, I should drink. Yeah. A lot. And I did. A lot. So much so that by my mid-20s, I was an alcoholic. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, she is smart. What a problem solver. Aren't we lucky to have her here today? But, you know, even as I was drinking, I did enjoy a certain success. I became a journalist, as Anne mentioned. I worked for the CBC. Might not have helped my alcoholism. And I had everything that one could want. And then one day, in my mid-30s, I was standing in the middle of the bedroom of the beautiful home I owned in the Plateau Montréal. I had on lovely clothes, I had the beautiful car outside that I owned, and I was going into the great job that I had. And I was miserable. I had everything I was told, and that you were probably told as well, with all good intentions, that we need to be happy and successful. It was all there. The veneer was perfect, and I was in despair. I wanted to die. More than wanting to die, I wanted to kill myself. And had there been a gun in the house, there would have been no cry for help. That would have been it. The thing is that as I said, I was just standing there, and I had no future, and I had a past filled with every opportunity, every advantage that was betrayed. I was standing in that void. I was standing in the gap, and then a miracle occurred. And that miracle was, I finally, for the first time in my life, admitted I needed help. And I reached out, and the help was there. In the past, I'd asked for help, but what I wanted was someone else to do the work for me. This time, I knew I had to do it myself. I was on my knees. I knew if I was willing to kill myself, and I stand here before you, I swear to God, I was willing to die, which meant, oddly enough, quite freeing, I was willing to try everything else first, keep suicide in the back pocket. So I did. I did everything I was told. I listened to everything. I grabbed hold of advice with all the vigor that a drowning person grabs a life preserver. And with the help of others, I got sober. Within a year of getting sober, I met Michael, who was the love of my life. Within 5 years, I had the first book out. And now, 30 years later, I stand before you humbled and grateful and filled with joy. I thought the worst was behind me, and it hadn't even begun. Anne quoted the 4 statements that lead to wisdom. And those were actually said by Michael, my husband. Michael became the model for my main character, Armand Gamache. Michael was the chief of hematology at the Montreal Children's Hospital, the doctor you never, ever want to meet. He treated desperately ill children. He sat with them through the night and beyond, holding their hands. He had to tell young parents things no young parent should ever have to hear. But when he came home, he was the happiest man I've ever met, because he understood from those young children what a gift life is and what a betrayal it would be for those children who don't get to live it, if those of us who do don't live it with joy, with gratitude, with decency, with courage. There are all sorts of very legitimate reasons today to be angry, to be filled with rage. I understand that. I'm not so old, not so naive not to see it. But it cannot come at the expense of hope. How are we going to get through life? You, everyone here in this auditorium and sitting behind me, are going to get through life unless we see the challenges, unless we see the big piles of merde that's out there, and God knows there's a lot of it. But we also have to see the courage, the goodness, the decency, and the kindness all around us. Hope is a revolutionary act, and civility is terrifying to those who would divide us. You have more challenges facing you today than I ever did. Sadly, it was my generation and my parents' generation who have merded up the world. And for that, I am profoundly sorry and very ashamed, and I'm trying to make amends. I have on the wall where I write a poster, and on it is the last words of the wonderful Irish poet Seamus Heaney, who on his deathbed whispered to his wife, "Noli timere, be not afraid." I wish you all great good things in the life ahead of you. It's very exciting as you head into the next chapter. But if perchance any of you should find yourself on the edge, thinking there's no way forward, please know that is not true. I am forever grateful for the wonderful things in my life, including today and this moment here with you. But I am also very grateful to have looked into the void. No gap, no miracle, no joy, no books, no Dr. Penny. It's also a reminder that none of us get to where we are on our own. And so I'm going to ask, I didn't, none of us here did. I'm going to ask the graduating students to do something. If you could strip down. No, I'm kidding. For a moment. If you could stand up, please. And I'd like you to try to find your parents and your family here. Hi Mom, hi Dad. And if you could applaud, because this is their day too. Woo! Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of your special day, and thank you for being part of mine.